Sacred boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They're bridges that protect your energy, your peace, and your purpose. So, in this episode, I'm talking about why boundaries are essential. Without boundaries, even the best marriages implode, right? We've seen it. We've seen people, they look so perfect together. You see what they're publishing on social media. Maybe they're the celebrity couple. Their life looks perfect. And then all of a sudden, they break up. But what are boundaries, right? What is it? We hear this word a lot. Boundaries are acts of self respect, not punishment. It protects your nervous system to have boundaries, your creativity, and your mental health. So I'm going to share a little story. I used to work with somebody many, many years ago. Let's call her Tessa. She was that person that everybody leaned on. If somebody wanted to take a Saturday off, she was there to fill in and cover. If somebody didn't want to work late, she would extend it. If her family called her for anything, she'd go running. You know the person, right? Is that person you? I mean, she was just always available. You could say she didn't have any boundaries. She was at home. She was the sister, the wife, the daughter, the caretaker, the best friend. She always picked up the phone, no matter who it was, no matter what time of the day or night. At work, I think that she got taken advantage of a lot. At first, I think she wore this like a badge of honor. I think a part of her kind of enjoyed being like everybody's, you know, scapegoat. I don't know. I think she enjoyed it secretly. I think it made her feel valuable, made her feel needed. So psychologically, I could understand why she probably did it. But I think that over time, the weight of it really began to grow on her. I think everybody just kind of got used to expecting her to rearrange her life and her plans whenever they were in crisis mode or had an emergency or their kid was sick. Her sister had a baby, and I think the baby was a couple of years old, not in school yet, not like pre-K, but much younger, still infant, like maybe 1 or 2. She was always over there. She was always helping her sister out. And I understood because it's her sister and then she's the auntie, right? But I remember she got sick. She got like some kind of bronchial thing, like she was coughing a lot at work and she wasn't feeling well. It was probably just a routine cold, where she's just not feeling good. And I said, you need to go home and rest, you need to get some sleep and, hydrate. And she looked at me, she's like, I have to go to my sister. I have to help her with the baby. She needs me. And I just saw her just completely, whatever anybody needed, even if she was sick, even if she wasn't feeling well, she was just always there, consistently showing up for everyone. And I think every time that she was saying yes to someone, she was saying no to herself. Her boundaries, they weren't just ignored. They weren't even visible. And I think it's because she just didn't make them clear. She never really said that. She never said no, basically. And I remember that she confided in me one time, something totally different. She said, I have this event and they asked me to do something. And I said I would bring it. I don't know if it was like a pie or a cake or, some kind of gathering and it was food related. She said, I have to bring this. And she was complaining to me. And I said, because it was expensive. And I said, I understand. That's really hard. You're baking. And she was, no, I'm buying it. And she started talking about how much it was costing her. And I remember thinking like, she never says no, and I said, and the way she was going on about it, I said, well, they're not offering to pay for it. And it's a volunteer thing. Why don't you just say no? And she goes, you know what, Sue? I can't, I don't know. When they ask me, I just feel like I freeze and like, I just can't say no. So then I looked at her and I said, why don't you try this next time when somebody asks you point blank for something? Just take a minute, just take a beat, look at them and say, I would love to do it. Can I think about it and get back to you? And I remember her expression. She looked at me kind of like wide-eyed, like she'd never thought about that. It never occurred that she could actually ask if she could get back to them. Because again, she always felt obligated. She always felt like she couldn't say no for whatever reason. And reality is without boundaries, people will just walk all over you. They'll just keep taking, right? They'll just keep taking. They know they can rely on you. They know they can call on you. And when we begin practicing boundaries, simple things like, I'm not available tonight, but I can talk tomorrow. I would love to do it. Can I get back to you? Unfortunately, I'm already booked. I'm happy to do it another time. just setting the tone that you're not always available. You're not always at the ready to accept and take on something extra. Slowly, people, at least the people that really value you, will start to see that you have boundaries. And, learning to honor your time like that, learning to honor you, learning to respect that. And I think that once you understand that having boundaries is not just essential for happiness, it's also a way that you honor yourself. So, what do sacred boundaries look like? I think saying no could be very emotional, right? Sometimes we feel guilty or we feel conflicted, but actually, it's okay. It's okay to say no. You could say not now, not today, not this week. Maybe not ever, right? It just depends. You're allowed to say no, and say no without apology. I know no sounds so final. I think it's worse when we hear it in children, when children learn to say no. I think they're taught, right? We're the ones saying it, so they learn. But better, it's like, can I think about it? Maybe, can I do it later? No is just so finite. But if you don't draw a line somewhere and create a boundary, then people don't learn to respect your time, right? They don't learn to respect you, in a sense. Energetic boundaries are when noticing a person when they leave, how you feel. How do you feel? Do you feel depleted? Do you feel exhausted? You need to step back. Notice what it takes from you when somebody is asking, right, and taking, not respecting the boundaries. You can feel really, really exhausted. In some cases, you could really get sick. So the practical way of dealing and establishing boundaries is by having clear communication. You know, talk about it. Talk about the expectations around time, workloads. What is it that they want? Clarify. Sometimes you should ask more questions. Like, I love to ask that question. I need you to do something. Great. Can you tell me more about it? You know, let me get back to you. Can I think about this for a little bit? Can I just let it marinate and come back? And I think it shows respect. It shows that we can value people and what they bring to the table when we can honor their time and respect their boundaries. So if your boundaries aren't being respected, what can you do about it? What is the way that we handle it? We can create distance, right? We can take physical distance, space. We can ask. We can just say in the moment. But setting the boundary is important, and also committing to that boundary to maintain that there's this commitment to your space. It has to happen over time. But sometimes with some people, you need to reiterate, you need to repeat, you need to redefine that boundary. Sometimes you have to take your own mental health back, right? In a relationship, you might have to say, I just cannot engage you right now. I need some space. I need some time for myself. And even if you are in a situation where you're living with someone, you're sharing space, that doesn't mean that you still don't get your boundaries. You still get the right to your privacy and the time that you need for yourself to self-reflect, to replenish your energy, to restore yourself. Even in those close, intimate relationships, you still need your boundaries respected. The payoff of having boundaries respected is your sovereignty. It's your peace of mind. It's self-confident building, even because it makes you feel happy with yourself that you can say that it's required, that you want this relationship or this exchange, but that you are honoring yourself first. And that in and of itself is a way that you can develop your own self-esteem, right? Healthy boundaries are necessary if you want your relationships to feel lighter and not heavier. You avoid burnout and resentment when you have your boundaries respected. You get to choose how and when to engage with people. Sacred boundaries essentially create freedom, and they create freedom from being limited, being boxed in, being used, being manipulated. Sometimes people can feel that, right? When they're being nice and helpful and they think I'm needed, and then they realize that they're being taken advantage of. It happens a lot to people. It happens too often. And you see it happen to people that they're the sweetest people in real life, the most loving, and those who are sometimes the most afflicted because they have the hardest time saying no. So in closing, I just want to just say that every time that you set a boundary, you're not pushing someone else away. You're not rejecting someone. What you're doing is you're calling yourself home. You're acknowledging your safe space, a sacred space. Boundaries aren't selfish. And if someone says that to you, I think that would be a clear indicator of someone that really doesn't respect you. And when you honor yourself, when you can create those boundaries, you'll find that you can love, you can love people, you can love work, you can lead with more clarity than ever before. So, in my next episode, I'm going to be talking about aligned partnerships. So many people stay in relationships, they say for the wrong reasons, but whatever the reasons are, we know quite a few people in our lives, right, that stay in relationships for years and years, even though they're unhappy, clearly expressing that they're not getting their needs met. And some of these partnerships could be professional relationships, they can be business relationships, not just personal, but any type of partnership that's not aligned, right? What does that create? So these aligned partnerships that are not aligned, they're incredibly draining, right? And because of them, because people are afraid of leaving, and I think mostly that's the fear of quote unquote, the grass is not always greener on the other side. Alignment is not about perfection. It's about resonance. And you need to ask, do my values, does my vision and energy match yours? So we're going to be discussing it in the next episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, please click like and subscribe. And I would love you to put in your comments, are you that person that has a hard time setting boundaries? Do you struggle with saying no? And if you do, what happens if you say no? It'd be really interesting to learn that. Thank you for watching the Dynamic Presence podcast. And I'm your host, Sue Perez, your lighthouse.